Amit, welcome to my Kamcrest channel. Today we're demoing you a smart home installation that we did for a client. I'm going to walk you through this entire closet step by step and kind of break down this entire implementation for you. Hey guys, so I just wanted to talk about a closet setup in a typical home. Typically when you set up a smart home, most people want everything consolidated into one rack or one area within their house. So when we do all the low voltage cabling, essentially we're running everything to one location throughout the entire house. This lets us consolidate all the equipment and any type of automation that we're doing. Besides running control wires to certain areas in the house, we typically map out our house and everything comes back to the closet. So any manipulation we need to do with those wires makes it easy for us because it's one centralized location. Now in this property, when we first came, if you look here, there was one giant metal rack in here, and unfortunately this closet this is it. It only opens this door, and the client was having overheating issues, and there were big amplifiers in here, and it kind of wasn't a usable, serviceable setup. So what we essentially did is we gutted the rack out and we made a wall solution. So if you see here in the back, we've mounted plywood. And this plywood is roughly 1/2 inch off the wall, which gives us, areas to snake our cables and stuff like that. So now for this client, basically, for example, all his cable box equipment, his Apple TVs, all his Sonos equipment, everything is wall mounted. And then all our network equipment is wall mounted on this back wall. And then we have our Ring hardware and Savant hardware, again, wall mounted on this side. So having this type of setup allows us to kind of manage this entire situation. Before we had a rack. Pulling the rack out was a two-man job, and it's a very intensive situation just to do a small reboot or some small fix. Another issue that this client was having was heating. So they had all these amps in there, and if the closet door was closed, they would start having overheating issues where the cable boxes won't work or the amplifiers will misbehave. So another thing we did is we installed a AC Infinity fan solution here. So if you look right here, look up top. So basically in this room, right here, come over here. So here, we cut a hole in the wall. This is where that closet wall borders. And essentially, this is your intake, which is on the lower end of the closet. So essentially heat rises. So this is sucking air in from a non-hot room, blowing air into the closet right here. You want to look right here. And then basically heat will naturally rise and then get ejected out the top vent. So this is just an example of a custom closet, where we're not using the standardized rack, and it kind of makes it much neater and cleaner, and for management and growth wise. Tomorrow if the customer decides to add new features or new smart devices to their house, they have some room to kind of manipulate their hardware. So this is an example of your closet. This is a quick overview on a Savant Automation control. So if you look here, pretty much this is a closet that we have set up for a client. They want to be able to control all this equipment through a Savant system. So what we've essentially done is installed a Savant host. This is essentially the main brain of the Savant system, which hosts the software in itself. And then we basically have two controllers here. Pretty much these are managing all the infrared controls and the RS-232 controls. So all our video zones, we have TVs, projectors, amplifiers, all those are essentially being controlled via IR, RS-232 or network. So these controllers basically are the devices that helps let Savant control those devices. Things like the Sonos equipment, the Lutron Lighting system, your Ring equipment, this is pretty much network control. So, since both the Savant system and this Sonos equipment and this other system go into the same network, the Savant system is able to see them over the network and essentially control them over the network. But typically, when people talk about Savant hardware, really all you're really going to pay for is the licensing of the software, which is the most expensive part, and then basically this iMac that they give you, Mac Mini that they give you, and these controllers. These controllers can, be very expensive. Again, it depends on what you're doing. You can get HDMI matrices. You can get, depending on how many zones you have in the house. Again, you can do audio matrices. If you're doing separate, your own custom amp control instead of like a Sonos equipment control. But again, depending on how your Savant system from an automation situation is laid out, that will really dictate the hardware setup and the cost of it. Here's a quick example. So I'm opening my app here. So here I'm going to go to the Savant app, and then here, as you can see, this is the Bond Street location. This kind of gives me an overview of what's being used right now. And then here in the Savant area, I have my Sonos system, all my Sonos zones defined. I have my lighting, all my lighting areas defined. Then I have my Apple TVs. Basically, I have two sources for all my video zones, Apple TV and cable box. So pretty much cable TV for those three areas, and my Apple TVs for those three areas. And then I have the ability to create custom scenes. Again, I can do any type of grouping between my smart services in these scenes. And then obviously I define my rooms. As you can see here, we take a picture of the room, and then, for example, we essentially see exactly what is available, what service is available in the room. So this is just a general diagram of a Savant system. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the foundation of it all, which is the UniFi Network. So as you can see here, these guys have a Spectrum internet connection. That modem is feeding the UniFi, it's called the Dream Machine. Basically, this is a router, a switch, and a cloud key in one. UniFi basically has a cloud key setup where basically all of the UniFi devices on the network are managed by this cloud key. So when you want to do any programming changes, adjustments, it's kind of like an enterprise mentality where you set it in the controller and it propagates throughout the network. So for this scenario, basically you have a Dream Machine acting as the router connected to the Spectrum internet connection. Then it's coming down, feeding to these two switches. This is a power over Ethernet switch, and this is another power over Ethernet switch in the back. All your Ethernet wires that are run throughout the house come into these two switches. Obviously it's a gigabit network. We ran Cat 6 throughout the property, and pretty much these switches feed to a total of 7 access points. Again, we have 2G, 5G networks here combined as one. So essentially this is a smart network where it decides what's the best band to connect to for each user. It also has something called the handshake methodology. So let's say you're in one side of the house, you walk to the other side. It will be smart enough to know that you move from one area and you're closer to the next access point versus the original. Pretty much this is the foundation of any smart home. Anything smart you buy, switches, little controls for outlets, shades, AV stuff, any type of smart, utility, whatever it's doing. Everything, the foundation now is your wireless network. So having a robust network from a LAN standpoint and a wireless standpoint will help you a lot in your smart home implementations. So this is a quick demonstration of a Ring system installed in a house. So this customer typically Ring has, you have cameras, you have your alarm system, and then you have your doorbells. Those are really the three main metrics what Ring has to offer from a smart home standpoint that we typically install. In this scenario, basically you have a Ring alarm. So this is basically a alarm brain that mounts. It has Ethernet connection to the network. Basically this has a built-in battery, and essentially this is the brain for your alarm system. It comes with one keypad. Typically we mount these keypads in entrances or master bedrooms, etc. But this customer pretty much manages everything through the app, so we put it right here in the closet. But basically this alarm system essentially has 3 motion detectors and 3 contact sensors, all wireless, that are spread out throughout the house for wherever they need to be. They all wirelessly sync with this. Typically, the wireless devices, their batteries last for 2 to 3 years, so it's a pretty long, lifespan, and it's not that big a deal to change the batteries throughout, every 2 years, maintenance-wise. So ring system really is a very straightforward thing to install. Pretty much your motions, your contact sensors are stick on or screw in, and there's really no wiring involved. All you're really doing is just syncing it. Battery management, is involved over 1 or 2 years, but again, it's not that big a deal. This customer also has a ring camera system, which we'll walk around and show you later on. But pretty much cameras are mounted on the ceilings. They're waterproof cameras, the Ring Elite stick-up cams. They're power over Ethernet, so pretty much an Ethernet wire goes straight into the switch, and the switch delivers them their internet connection and their power. These cameras have motion and night vision and audio recording, so pretty much, as motion happens or some audio disturbance happens, the camera can basically turn on and it'll shoot or record and essentially take that video capture and put it onto the Ring cloud. There's no ideology of a DVR. Pretty much everything is based on the Ring cloud. So, typically Ring, you pay $100 a year and they give you, all the recording you need for all your devices. And then in this situation, the customer has alarm monitoring also as a feature. So again, this is your basic Ring install. So this is a demonstration of a Sonos system typically installed in a home. So as you can see here, I'm gonna go and open the Sonos app. And if I go to my zones here, we have a total of 12 zones here. So just to give you an example, front terrace, home theater, kitchen, kitchen ceiling, library, living room, you can kind of read down the list. But typically, in a home, Sonos equipment varies on what type of situation you're setting it up for. In this home, pretty much all the speakers are in-ceiling speakers. So basically, it's a standard speaker in the ceiling, flushed in every single room. So in that scenario, basically, we're running each speaker with a Sonos amplifier. So here we got wall brackets for the Sonos amplifiers, and essentially wall-mounted, a total of 9 amps. All these amps essentially are defined in those Sonos app. So when I pull up the app here, you can essentially see each thing labeled according to what it is. And then obviously you have the beauty of Sonos where we go into our inputs, and then we have all our online stuff, SoundCloud, Spotify, etc. set up, choose our artist, and then we can essentially play to each one of these zones, group it however we wish to, and kind of get the whole value add of having a Sonos system controlled by your app. Just so you know, we typically, when we set up Sonos products, Sonos itself makes something called Sonos Net, which is like a proprietary wireless network where all Sonos devices talk to each other. What we typically do is we devote a specific switch just to all the Sonos devices, and then everything is kind of hardwired into the network. So from a control standpoint, there's no lag. You're not using Sonos Net. It's one LAN. Everything is connected, and the app runs smoothly. Hey guys, this is a quick overview of a power management solution in a smart home. So typically nowadays, when we install, wireless networks and LANs throughout a property, we are putting UPSs on the network. So the UPS basically means uninterrupted power supply. This device basically has a battery in it. We basically take these long surge protectors, these power strips that go up and down throughout the entire rack, and then one is essentially surge protected and one is essentially battery backup. So pretty much all your mission critical devices like your network, your router, your modem connection to the internet, your Ring alarm system, anything that's mission critical in a power failure, we essentially wire through this UPS. And then another device that we typically wire for all the standard surge devices is this Panamax. This essentially basically gives us smart power on-off control. So when the customer, for example, needs everything except the network rebooted, then we have the ability to go into the app and essentially power cycle the, this entire strip that will only control the AV equipment. So this is just a standard example of power management. It's very important to put devices like a UPS here. Again, if anything, from an electrical surge standpoint happens, this will be the first device to kind of fry and take the hit. So UPS is very important for a battery backup and your, surge protection. So again, this is a power setup for a custom closet. Alright guys, so the next demonstration that we want to go through is a Lutron Radio RA2 system. Basically, the Lutron setups are pretty straightforward. What you typically do is you install a Lutron main repeater, which is all the way at the top right there with that red plug in that white box. That's called the Lutron main repeater. And right next to it, that little black box in the corner, is a Lutron cloud key. Basically, this is the brains of the operation for all the switches. So all the switches essentially talk to this device. This is what's holding all your scenes, your programming, all your definitions for those switches, which goes into your network. And then that little black box essentially is the Lutron app. So when you want to have the app essentially talk to your switches, that's the medium that's essentially delivering that whole situation for you. Pretty much from a switch standpoint, it's very straightforward. Typically we go around the entire house, we look at the lighting fixtures that are installed. Based off that, we spec out, whatever the customer wants from a switching standpoint. Here they wanted a dimming function. Typically, most of these radio array switches are standard dimmers. You can get them in on-off switches, different load ratings, depending on what type of lighting or solution you're trying to solve here. Right next to it is something called a Pico remote. This is basically a wireless remote that essentially can serve as a switch in a certain area, or at the same time a handheld remote where you can tell it to do XYZ function. But pretty much throughout this property, we have about, I would say, 70 switches installed throughout every single area. So the customer has the ability to basically open an app, go into their Savant system essentially and connect. And then here you can see they can go to their lighting, and then all of their switches are essentially defined in the app. And they have on-off control. They can create their own scenes. So when they walk in, we have this house Siri controlled. So they can say, hey, I'm home. Hey Siri, I'm home. And basically whatever scene of lights they want to go on and off can essentially happen. So this is essentially a Lutron Radio RA2 system. And it is also compatible with Shades, the Lutron Shades, but in this scenario, the client has Somfy Shades, so they're a different brand and kind of managed separately. But again, this is just an intro and a basic overview of a Lutron Radio RA2 system. Thank you.
I just wanted to quickly demo these shades to you. This is a automated example of Somfy Shades. Basically, you can see this is an RF remote I'm holding. It has a multiple selector on the bottom of the remote. If you see those little orange lights, every time I press that bottom button, I'll get to cycle through each one of the shades. And then essentially I have the ability to put them up and down and essentially control them, put them at any height I want. If I hit that little middle button, if I set up a scene like I want them halfway or halfway down, halfway up, I can essentially program that little setting. It's like a little memory setting, and every time I hit that button, the shades, either combination of them, will behave in whatever manner I set it to. So this is just a typical example of motorized shades. Now keep in mind, this system is purely controlled by a remote. You can also take this to the next level and basically have it integrated with your network, where it'll show up on wireless and you'll essentially have app control. And you can also go into voice control once you get it on the network.
Hey guys, this is a quick example of voice automation. There are many different voice automation platforms out there. You have Google Home, you have Apple Home, and you have Alexa from Amazon. Alexa by far is the latest one as far as being on the market, so the compatibility wise is kind of the best, but the other ones are catching up for sure. So in this scenario, this customer is a full-fledged Apple customer. They have iPhones, everything Mac product. So here we've installed essentially Apple Homes, the mini pods. This is a Siri device. So now I'm just going to quickly demo to you how to use this. So for example, besides obviously controlling your automation, there are smart devices which you can talk to, ask questions, what's the time, what's the date, etc., what's the weather. So now we're going to say, hey Siri, please turn on all the kitchen lights. So So as you can see, this kitchen has 3 lights. All of them are on a scene. So when the customer basically says turn on kitchen lights, the entire scene is executed. And now we're just gonna demo it again. Hey Siri, turn off kitchen lights. Hey Siri, turn off kitchen lights. There you go. So now all the lights are on. And you have to be a little bit, loud and clear with it, especially if you're, standing like, half a room away from it. Sometimes it gets a little bit cumbersome because a lot of iPhone users have Siri on their iPhone. So if they're in a room talking to a Siri, and the iPhone will start coming up. But know your spacing, kind of figure out how these things work. But this is just an example of automating through voice control. And again, you can do this with shades, lighting, HVAC, pretty much the gamut. I just wanted to give you a demonstration of a typical AV zone that we set up. So in this room, basically, as you can see, we have a projector up there. We have a fixed screen. We have 3 speakers hidden behind the screen. This screen is a perforated screen, so basically you can tuck speakers behind there and air can pass in and out of the screen. We have a subwoofer kind of tucked in underneath that table. And then in the rear, we have these 2 long satellite speakers acting as the rears. This is a 5.1 scenario. Basically, for this zone, you have a cable box as your cable source and a Apple TV 4K for all your smart sources. So now this system is integrated with a Savant Automation. So this is a typical Savant remote right here. And here what we're doing is we're essentially selecting our room. We're in the home theater. And we want to basically go to Apple TV. And as you can see now, the projector has automatically turned on. And just give it a few seconds, it's gonna light up. And while this thing turns on, as you can see, the Savant remote gives you all different types of actions. You can essentially control your entire house, choose all of the different type of rooms that you want, and essentially go into the room, whatever metric of control you have in that room, lighting, HVAC, AV, essentially everything is organized per area. So now here, we're basically in Apple TV. The projector has started up, and what we want to do here is AirPlay a song straight to the Apple TV. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my iPhone out, go to YouTube, search for a song, whatever video I want to essentially stream. And then here, as you can see, I'm going in here, choosing my AirPlay devices, and where are my Apple TVs? So you have an Apple TV for the pool area, the terrace, where's my home theater Apple TV right there. So now here, I'm basically doing a live stream straight to this zone. And I think the volume is down. Let me just put the volume down. And this is a pure wireless transmission. Basically, you have an access point. This phone is essentially sending its data to the access point, which is relaying it to the Apple TV. And basically, you have your full wireless solution kind of managed. This is Amit from Kamcrest. I just wanted to show you a typical outdoor TV zone that we set up. We apologize, it's a rainy day in New York today, so we're kind of working with the weather here, but this is a typical example of an outdoor TV. As you can see, this is an older Skyview TV that the customer already had. It comes with a waterproof soundbar. It's kind of like an all-in-one unit. We also have a Sonos zone tucked in right here that kind of ties into this TV, but basically this is an outdoor unit. So now this entire setup is controlled by Savant. We're out here in the pool area, we whip out our phone, we select, so we have 2 sources. We have Apple TV and cable box. Essentially go into the Savant app, select our source, and it will cycle the TV on. And pretty much all your audio is coming out on the soundbar area, and then all your controls for the Apple TV or your cable box, everything is essentially managed through here. So here I can kind of go in, choose my TV shows, whatever I have to do. And all this is hardwired downstairs to the closet. So really the only wireless metric you really have of control is your phone to the access point using the app in the Savant on the network. As far as the TV itself, everything is hardwired on the LAN, so everything is network controlled, and pretty much bulletproof. Thank you.